our last session before we close out this conference and hear some final reflection thoughts. No better way than to hear from our future right behind me. I would like to introduce 5 amazing people. They have self-organized and they're just gonna give their perspectives and hope for the next future years and whatever messages that they need to come with. I just want to introduce and welcome back Jordyn from Métis Nation, Saskatchewan.
You got it.
And Dakota Norris from University of Saskatchewan. Mihskakwan James Harper from NRStor. Larissa Crawford from Future Ancestors. And Danny Kehler from Student Energy. Welcome all.
No. Thank you so much, Dave, and thank you to everybody that's attended these past few days. It's been so lovely, and we've, been sitting back and taking in all the knowledge that we've been learning, and just kind of debriefing and absorbing just the people, the people and the energy, and it's just been so nice. So thank you. And I think we'll do a little bit of introductions, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves and share their stories. I think it's important for us, especially as Indigenous people, we're storytellers, right? So you're probably going to laugh. So get ready to whip out your auntie laughs. Disa, I'm looking at you. No pressure. Yeah, today we just wanted to share some perspectives. Youth, that's an awesome term that and an awesome group that represents that term. And that's something we want to kind of unpack, is also our understanding of youth and where they fit into these spaces, where we fit into these spaces, and how to better engage and work with young people. So, without further ado, I'd like to start with Larissa. And Larissa is absolutely incredible. I don't know if anybody's on social media, but this girl is a superstar. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna make all of you shy all day long. But not only in just that, she's just really cool, but she does things that help uplift people and the most oppressed people. And that's some of the most important work that we can all be doing. So thank you, Larissa, and I'll let you lead us through your story of how you got here into the energy space.
Thank you so much, Jordyn. I'm loving this. It feels like a witnessed hangout because we're all pretty good friends, and so I'm feeling really comfortable sharing space with y'all today. So, danser, Larissa Crawford, Deshinekashin, Calgary, Yukon, puis mi famille Penetanguishing, puis Jamaica, Yukon. Bonjour, je m'appelle Larissa Crawford. J'ai une ascendance métisse de Penetanguishing et une ascendance afro-caribéenne de Jamaïque. Je sais que cette présentation, que les sessions sont pas en français, mais si vous voulez faire des questions, des commentaires en français, c'est un événement national, alors s'il vous plaît, faites-le. Hey, I'm Larissa Crawford. I have Métis ancestry from Penetanguishing, Ontario, and Afro-Caribbean ancestry from Jamaica. I pass this ancestry on to my 5-year-old daughter, Zyra, who's not with us today. And yeah, a bit of background. I've been doing anti-racism and Indigenous research for over 13 years now. I got involved really young. I'm very passionate about it. And so all throughout university, I really focused my energy on Indigenous and anti-racism research and policy. And right after I graduated, I kind of fell into a position with the Ontario Ministry of Energy, Northern Development and Mines. I had no background in energy. It felt like every meeting was walking into a master's level class that I had no idea what was going on. And there got to this point when I was working as an Indigenous policy advisor, where we were put on assignment, and we were asked to fly into a remote community to extract information within 2 hours and then to fly back And our policy unit, the Indigenous policy unit, we collectively said no to this assignment. We resisted this understanding of time and urgency was not only not in alignment with our cultural teachings and the significance and value we place on relationships, but it was also pretty coerced violence. And we had to spend a lot of time explaining to our peers how this was violence, how not even a generation ago, government folk, Indian agents, were going into these communities and taking our children. We're taking our knowledge, are taking our children. And so we need to understand that history and those realities as we, as government people, are going into these communities to extract and to not place emphasis on that reciprocal relationship, to not place emphasis and value on the time spent in community. And so these kind of experiences were the norm in my experience at the Ministry of Energy. And I really was close to leaving the energy sector altogether. I became very passionate about it, but seeing how internalized racism in individuals and within the structures was directly affecting the outcomes of what communities got funding and how they were allowed to report on that funding was very dystopian to me, and I didn't want to be a part of it. And then I met Meredith Alder from Student Energy in 2018. She saw how frustrated I was at a G7 event, and she invited me to 7Gen, and that's where I met almost all of us. That's where I met Aaron, and that's where I really gained some hope about engaging in the energy sector, and Jordyn and Danny really coined it, energy kinship. And this is really where I started feeling, okay, there is hope for this future. I do enjoy doing energy work. And so I don't want to talk too much more, but this is what brought me here, and the energy kinship. I kind of fell into the energy sector, but the energy kinship and the people beside me, the people in this room, are the ones that kept me here. And we'll talk more about relationships and time as we go throughout today, but you're looking at the reason why I'm still here.
Wow, it's a tough act to follow. Larissa is always dropping a lot of truth in the rooms, and I'm so grateful to have a friend like Larissa in my circles, and continuously being inspired by all the stories that she's telling very authentically. Yeah, energy kinship. It reminds me of what a conversation I had with my kukum, my grandmother. Over tea and bannock one day, she was asking me, so what's this renewable energy about anyways? Like, what's all your work about? Like, what's this and that? Telling her about, like, okay, well, solar and harvesting the power of the sun and the wind, and giving that electricity to provide to power our homes and everything like this. Like, just illustrating it at a high level. She was like, okay, grandson, like that makes sense to me. I guess you explain energy in a very like like a very logical, I should say, sort of one line kind of way, which is interesting because that's how I'm taught through my education. But she told me that in the Nihiawiwin language, how she interprets energy, kakiao eawin, which literally translates to it's all around us. And she spoke that energy to her is interwoven into every single thing that's around us. And it positions ourselves in our relations to everything around us. Everything around us is our relations. And by doing so, she says that how could you treat our own environment, which is our relations, the animals, the plants, everything around us, how could you treat our own relations in a negative way? And this is how we carry ourselves where we come from Sturgeon Lake, as Nihiao people. So with that, Mihskakwan James Harper, Nia Sagawino Namiskakegan Nihiao Askioche. I'm from Sturgeon Lake Cree Nation, Alberta, Treaty 8 territory, proud citizen. And actually, so part of my story, that's one of the pieces as I was going along with my master's, which I'm pleased to announce that I have just graduated. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's I'm going over to Stockholm, Sweden next month to collect my diploma, and I'm really excited. It was a very life-changing experience. But you know, I want to use that information, all that knowledge that has been invested into me for the good, right? And that's another piece of my journey that I want to share to our young people, especially, that there's definitely a lot of pathways to succeed, and you can do it. And so one last piece I just want to share about my story, how I ended up here. A very pivotal moment was actually at Generation Energy in Winnipeg. It's 2015, I believe. Just finished my bachelor's. I didn't know what I was doing in my life at all. I was lost. I was like, okay, what do I do with my education? This and that. And I attended a session hosted by Chris Henderson, Executive Director of ICE. And, you know, he's talking all this and that. Oh, it's so amazing, clean energy for Indigenous communities. Isn't that amazing? That's so awesome. And I was like, yeah, it is. But, you know, he was like, any questions? And so I was that one pushy youth, you know, maybe a word annoying, I don't know. But I was like, excuse me, yes. You know, what are we doing to engage our young people in this space? What are we doing, like, when we're planning clean energy projects? How are we engaging with the youth? And I wanted to make it clear, because clean energy projects, as you heard from this morning, what we're doing in RVAD and across the country from all these amazing inspirational stories, these assets are multi-generational, you know? We're talking about installation of wind turbines, solar panels, heat pumps that are intended to last beyond this generation. They're intended to last 20 plus years. So youth are integral into inheriting everything that we decide today. And Chris was like, I think you make a good point there, James. And so sure enough, he gave me a book and enrolled me into the 2020 Catalyst program, where I too met Erin, and she uplifted me in so many different ways. And then here we are with the masters, but also being a big, trying to do a big role in upholding our mission with 7Gen and empowering more Indigenous youth into this space. So I'll leave it there. I know that there's so many more stories and inspirational people on this panel, and there's much more to talk about, but yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Awesome. Maybe we'll pass it over to Dakota, and then Danny, you can finish us off with your cool stories. But James, I had to howl for my book from Chris. He's like, I want to hear the first animal call wins this book. So I like howled like a wolf. And then he gave it to someone at the front. I'm so mad. But this is absolutely incredible. Like, I love the connections here. And, you know, you see our world gets so small, and that energy kin is very real. So, Dakota, share a little bit about your story, your journey.
Yeah, thank you. They decided to save the best for last. So. It's good to be here with old friends and new. You just reminded me of something that happened for me. The former Deputy Grand Chief of the Gwich'in Tribal Council, I'm from the Gwich'in First Nation. He one day came up to me and handed me a book, a little red and black book, and he said, "This is actually signed by the author. You should read this." And that's all he said. And that was actually Chris Henderson's book. And I didn't even learn about the organization until several years later. But that little spark, you know, that's been sitting on my shelf unread for many years. But yeah. But every once in a while I look at it and I browse it, and in all seriousness, I think just those little acts those little things, sharing, connecting people, and encouraging them to, dive deeper and make connections and things is very much how I got to be in this space myself. So I finished my undergraduate degree, and then I immediately saw a job opportunity to lead a project called the Future Exchange Project, which Larissa was a part of and probably several people here have heard of. Prior to that, I was not at all involved in climate or energy stuff, but this program for me, I just decided to kind of take a chance and learn about, what's this whole youth thing about, and why is it important, why should I care? Because to be honest, I went to business school, and they teach you how to maximize things and make things efficient, and it's like, youth, that could be like a cool thing to think about. Maybe we can have some inspirational discussions, but how do we reduce emissions or whatever with youth engagement? There's not a very clear connection, and I'm extremely glad that I took that time and I stuck with that program, because I'll be honest, it was extremely hard. We had, I think, 16 spots, 8 Gwich'in, 8 from all around Canada, and probably over 50% of the original applicants who were accepted ended up at some point or another dropping out of the program. I'm happy to say that several of them were able to return, but I think a lot of the reason that happened was, to be honest, part of our misunderstanding of proper engagement and recruitment and retention, and just not designing things in a way that's very responsive to youth. But at the same time, things are interconnected, right? So youth are very young. They might be dealing with career changes, education changes. They might be dealing with mental health issues. They might be doing some growth spiritually and emotionally, mentally, everything. And to be responsive to that means a lot of flexibility, and it means a lot of risk. It means changing your KPIs. It means changing your deliverables. It means changing your timelines and a lot of things. And so I'm happy that I did that, and it was extremely challenging, but I learned a lot. I'm still learning about it today, and I hope some of the people that were in the program are still happy to have participated in that. I'm now a coordinator for the Northern and Indigenous Sustainable Energy Initiatives at the University of Saskatchewan, and I'm happy to say that's also done in partnership with the Gwich'in. I just keep stumbling into these opportunities where I don't have to move away from Saskatoon, but I get to visit home, which is very ideal, and I know it's extremely challenging for Indigenous people, especially Indigenous youth, to be away from home, and there's some expectations to stay engaged or to lead, and there's some identity issues with, am I north or am I south, what space am I occupying? So I'm extremely happy that there are partnerships and initiatives out there that allow people to participate in all of these different things in these different ways. I could speak more about the program later, but I've been going for a while, so I'll pass it on to Danny now.
So Danny, her name is Danny. Some people call her Danielle, mainly her mom when she's upset. But she has a new name, and it is the Antarctic Ant. And so she's going to share a little bit about that incredible journey. Danny is actually the first First Nations person to ever go to Antarctica. She has a pretty incredible story, so I just wanted to embarrass you first. I'm just kidding. She's very, very incredible.
Thanks for that shout out, Jordyn. So Tansei, Kape Wawasak, Danny Kehler, Mihskakwan, Nia Neheo Squayo, Kwakatuiste Kochinia. So hello and how are you? My name is Comes Lightning, and my English name is Danny Kehler. I'm a Plains Cree woman from Kwakatu's First Nations on Treaty 4 territory. And I am the first First Nations person to be part of the 2041 Foundation, which is a global climate initiative where Robert Swan, he's a well-known environmentalist, takes a mixture of scientists, government people, business, students from all over the world, and takes them down to Antarctica to see firsthand the drastic effects of climate change and how it affects Antarctica. And we learned so much about Antarctica down there. And if Antarctica goes, we all go. So we really have to preserve and care for it. And it's called the 2041 Foundation, because in 2041, the peace treaty for Antarctica comes up for discussion. So that means that nations across the world can go down there and go fight for its natural resources or go drill for it or whatever that they want to do to the land, because it's untouched. It's the last place on Earth that is untouched. And it holds 70% of the world's fresh water. And so that's pretty crazy to think about, that, you know, this one place holds the majority of our fresh water. And, you know, water is sacred. Water is life. So we have a duty to protect that. So now I am on a mission to spread my knowledge with Indigenous communities, non-Indigenous communities, all across Canada, all across Turtle Island, all across the world, basically, about this initiative and what I learned. And yeah, so that's why I'm the Antarctic auntie. Follow me on TikTok. Just kidding.
Seriously, follow her on TikTok.
We're trying to make it blow up. But I am in my 4th year of business management at the University of Saskatchewan. I have 3 classes left, so I am done my degree, which I'm very excited about. Thank you. I am also the head person for the spokesperson portfolio for the Indigenous Business Student Society on campus at Edwards, but it's not specifically for Indigenous business students. Like, you could be a student at the university in any kind of department or college. You could also be at SIIT or other technical institutes all across the city. Like, you don't have to be a University of Saskatchewan student, and we're all about inclusivity and diversity. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, so there's Indigenous and non-Indigenous people on there, and I am in charge of corporate communications, merchandise, graphic design, and like, I'm the head person for this whole portfolio. So I reach out to different corporations and organizations and get funding and sponsorship so we can hold round dances, galas, get scholarships, and different kind of student support systems that will help our students and the people that are in our group. And I am the Vice Chair of Delegate Relations for the 2022 7 Gen Indigenous Youth Energy Summit.
Not anymore.
Oh,
We have an announcement to make, actually. She's so new, she didn't even remember.
So I just got informed that I got the manager position for 7 Gen yesterday. Boss things.
Thank you everybody for sharing your incredible stories. And it's also diverse, you know? I think we can all blame Erin for throwing us head first for the most part, but that's just what it is, though. Like, we have these incredible allies, these people that have paved the way and helped to, you know, find that belief that you know, may be wavering in the back of your mind, but it's there, and you just need someone to push that to the front of your mind. And I think one person that we do need to honor in this space is Disa, because Disa is actually the co-founder of the very first 7 Gen, which we wouldn't be sitting on this stage, many of us, without her incredible work. So we love you, Disa. We love you, Disa. You guys blow me away. So I think we're going to move into a deeper discussion around, you know, some of the whys of why we're here. But I think, like, you heard it yesterday, I spoke a little bit about, you know, youth incarceration rates, some of the social issues that impact our communities. I think it's safe to say we're all here because we want to make change in that way. But more specifically, let's talk about solutions and the ways in which you found working with different organizations and different people. You know, for myself, having someone like Erin and even James and like all of these people on stage, you know, having those people that constantly are pushing you to just do better and think outside of this box that we create for ourselves, that we, you know, like, and this support system that, you know, doesn't give up on people. I think that is one of my important takeaways, that you know, the solutions-based thing. I once had a woman say, how do I include you in this space in the easiest way? You know, what work do I need to do so you don't have to work as hard? Because we want more people like you in this space. And I was like, wow, that's revolutionary, but that's like, that shouldn't be. So let's hear from each one of you. Danny, maybe because you have the mic, do you want to start?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay. Yeah, I kind of blabbed on a little bit. So what are some really good ways that you found including young people in the energy space?
That's a really good question. Well, with my journey, so my journey started at 7Gen. I remember sitting at this table and this lovely person right beside me was talking on stage, and I was thinking at that moment, like, I don't belong here. Like, I'm around a bunch of engineers, like scientists, like all these cool people. At 7Gen, I was like, I'm just an artist. Like, I wasn't in business school at the time. I wasn't doing anything. I was just painting. I was like, I don't belong here. And then at that moment, James was just like, and you belong here. He's like, you're a warrior. We need warriors, you know, in the technical spaces. We need warriors behind the scenes. We need business warriors. We need front of the line warriors. And it's just like, I'm a warrior. And then that sent me on my journey. And from there, it just became like a snowball. And one of the things that really helped me was the people that I surrounded myself with. And like, because I knew absolutely nothing about the energy world, about climate science, any of that. I just had a passion. I just had this unknown passion within me that I had a duty to look after Mother Earth and help and protect her. And these people who were in different kind of spaces and who had different knowledge and, you know, expertise helped me navigate these systems along my way to find my journey. So, you know, like Meredith, like James, like Jordyn, like Disa, like the list could go on and on and on, honestly. But all these people really helped me. So I think that, you know, just opening up and taking a risk on people who really don't have the background behind it, you know, but like they show that they're passionate or that they want to, and they just need the know-how. So I think, like, you know, open up these spaces for individuals to enter them will be beneficial to all, because not everybody, you know, thinks the same or like works the same. Like with engineers, like I'm not smart like that. Like I couldn't do the work that James does. Like there's absolutely no way. I was like, but I see things differently, like with my art, and that's my outlet and how I can express it and how I can get through to people. So, you know, if we merge all of these things together, then we can really create something beneficial for the youth. And the next generations that are coming on. So, you know, it's like a shift of a mindset. We got to shift the mindsets that we have right now to open up these spaces for Indigenous youth to really have a voice and to be unapologetically Indigenous, you know, to talk, even if their voice shakes, because my voice shakes all the time. But I'm still occupying these spaces, and, you know, like I always say, like, fake it till you make it. And like, it's like, I can't believe I'm making it. But, you know, like, so I think that that's one of the key components, is just giving these opportunities to Indigenous youth and taking a risk on them and, you know, helping guide them, because when we do that, like, there's absolutely no limits to the possibilities that we can create, and where we're not only just surviving with Mother Earth, but we're thriving with her, and we're taking it back to that holistic harmony, you know, set where how our ancestors used to live before colonization, before all that stuff happened. And I'm really trying, I think that that's like the key component of bringing it all back, you know, full circle, so we can get there with Indigenous and non-Indigenous people alike, and, you know, just really live in harmony together with Mother Earth, protecting her from everything. Yeah.
Thank you, Danny. That was she's always like mic drop. Like we can't give her the mic because she always drops it. So Dakota, follow that lovely story.
Boy.
We want to hear your solutions.
Sure. I think a lot of what Danny said is what I would have said, but I've got a lot to say about this because I've been struggling in this area and seen several successes over the years. I think a key component of that, giving those opportunities and engaging, is that you have to take the time to do it. It's a significant time investment, and you just have to accept that that's a thing. You can't have, a director or a chief or a government employee who's working 50 hours a week, and then off the side of their desk, they're trying to start some cool new youth program or something. You need to say, whose job is this? Who's gonna take the time out of their day to do this? This is not, if you're gonna legitimately commit to youth engagement, that's a commitment. That's not just, I'm gonna send an email and say, hey, come join our conference and have some fun. I will say, just so we're clear, everything Pembina is doing, I'm very happy with. These are other conferences I'm referencing. And special shout out to Pembina for inviting all of us here and giving us the space.
Thank you, Dakota. Good save.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, I think a lot of these processes are not good. A process has to be a process, right? It can't just be, some examples I've seen is hey, we want youth engagement. Let's invite several youth to come speak to a minister. And you have 10 minutes to speak to the minister. You're 19 years old. It's okay, I want you to summarize your whole life lived experience, your community, be extremely vulnerable with all the challenges that you have, and then understand my federal or territorial or whatever strategy, and then tell me what you think I should be doing differently. This youth is taking time out of their day. They're making themselves extremely vulnerable. They're in that space, and to give them that short window of opportunity, that's not a process, that's not engagement, that's setting people up to fail. So a process would be something like taking a whole day to speak with youth, or giving the youth time to self-organize, or something along those lines. And another sort of critical thing, but some lessons learned here as well, I won't say who, but a government agency recently sent a youth engagement strategy that I was asked to consult on, which I did happily, but there's some flaws in this thinking where the government was thinking, or this certain agency was thinking we want to engage youth and we don't really know how, so we're going to hire a consultant to go and ask the youth, a handful of youth, what they want, and then they'll summarize it in a report and then send it back to us, and we want one key recommendation. And again, business school, Western economies, all these things, they want the one optimal solution, right? They want efficiency and they want all that stuff, but the reality that we know, with Indigenous communities, is similar to youth, where everything is based in the context. You have to understand why somebody wants to be there, to understand what process you're going to be using, to understand how you should be engaging somebody. If somebody's coming to a Renewables conference, are they looking for a job? Are they looking to change the world? Are they an entrepreneur? Are they trying to find financing? Depending on what the answer to that question is, will change how you're setting up your space, who you're building connections with, et cetera. And even that's all process that requires thinking, right? Just show up and figure it out is putting all the labor, emotional and spiritual and everything else, on the youth, and you're just hoping they'll come to you and give you the one ultimate solution, and then you can go from there. That's not the reality. The reality is, if you want to do youth engagement, you have to commit to it, and you have to invest the time and the labor and the resources. And as I was mentioning in the first part where I was speaking, you have to be very flexible, right? The KPIs, the timelines, everything, that needs to be iterative, and that requires flexibility, which I know the federal government is doing really well with changing how they allocate financing. I know programs like ICE and stuff spend amazing amounts of time. You can see the very authentic engagement and connections that are made. So to scale that, I think, would be extremely important. That's some of the things I would have to say.
Great, I like that. I think it's pathways, equitable pathways for young people. What does that look like within your organization? So thank you, Dakota. That's really insightful. And maybe around equity, I don't know if this would be your solution, but that's kind of right up your alley, Larissa. So I'm going to hand this to you next.
Cool. I want to really just quickly pick up on, so Dakota, again, led the Future Exchange program. And when he said, create space for us to coordinate and plan, they actually did that really well when we were in Inuvik. They gave us a whole half day to plan an engagement that we had with several executives in oil and gas, who have a lot of power in the industry. And so we were given time to strategize, to decide who brings what to the table, how do we want to approach these questions, and what do we want to get out of this time with them. And when we went into that space, we were able to have like this, share in this collective confidence, where this power imbalance, that margin was closed enough for us to really get really amazing conversations out of that. So I just want to hype up Dakota for that and just make sure that we know that he did that. It was amazing. Yeah, so for me, I'm gonna try to compress this, but yeah, when I think about harm and solutions and why I'm still able to be here, it has to do with particularly two relationships: relationship to time and relationship to qualification. So relationship to time, this is how I've seen so much harm caused in communities, especially when we're working with remote communities, especially when we're working with people who have no idea what those experiences are like and those realities look like. So again, I had mentioned at the beginning, we were assigned to go in to a remote community for 2 hours and leave. At the core of that issue was a worldview misalignment, where we see this urgency culture prioritized above all else. Our relationship to time is not neutral. It is very much informed and has a very deeply rooted history within capitalism and colonialism, where my ancestors' relationship to time was used as a way to dehumanize us. When my African ancestors were being colonized by British colonizers, they would use our experiences of time that wasn't aligned with a clock or a profitable use of time or accurate measurement of time. That wasn't in our value system. But because profitable and accurate use of time became so aligned with emerging capitalism and Christianity and civilization, we were positioned as inhuman, as not civilized. This happened to my Indigenous ancestors as well. Indian time, African time, like those are real things. Those are real things. Those are real cultural experiences. So when we place value on time to build relationships, time to share words and connection over meals, time to build trust, those are different experiences and expectations of time. And too often when we're working in our institutions or organizations, we impose our own relationship to time. And this is where we often see so much harm caused. Even, and I wasn't going to go here, but I'm going to go here. Even at our Indigenous youth session, and I want to say this because several youth came to talk to me after to say how triggering this was. But we were in the middle of a very, very safe space that Dakota very effectively held for us. And a white woman barged into this room and interrupted a speaker. She felt very entitled to that space in that moment, and she disrupted an entire connection that we had in that room. That was not a safe space. That caused harm. She imposed her own relationship to time in that moment. And now I'm not trying to I don't even remember what you looked like, but I hope you're here. And that when we think about relationship to time and our own cultural relationships to time, that we're also aware of the harm we may cause in imposing that on other cultural experiences of time. Now, when I look at solutions and how do we address this, one, it starts with education and understanding actually the history of the colonization of time. And if you look in the WOVA app, my recommended articles, there's one on the decolonization of time. So if you're actually looking for that history, it's in the WOVA app under this session. It looks like, for us, working with the seasons. We have a seasonal work cycle. So we look at how does our health, how does our work demand change with the seasons, and how do we honor those changes in how we work together? It looks like, for example, me, I have a 4-day work week because time on the land is important to my work. My relationship to land and building that relationship is a valuable use of my work time. And so that's how we've responded and really considered how are we creating space for these relationships of time, and how are we holding conversations to name that? And then quickly, my second point is relationship to qualification. So I'm often actually, when I'm at conferences, I go to conferences a lot, and sometimes people are a little too surprised when I say I'm a speaker. They're like, oh, you're a speaker, really? Really? Whoa, how did you get here? Way too surprised, especially when my white peers aren't asked that. They're asked, oh, what are you speaking on? And there isn't that tinge of surprise. And that's really informed by who do we find as valuable? Who do we consider valuable in these spaces? Who do we consider valuable educators? Who's qualified to speak in front of a room like this? This also comes, and Gia really owned in on this in the Indigenous session. They had asked, who here is from the North? And they were the only person from the North, apart from Dakota, in that room. From the Yukon. But we got into a conversation, about qualification and who's qualified to be here. Do we have to go through post-secondary education to have value in this space? Do we have to have a certain language and be able to dress the part to feel welcomed and valuable in this space? That's a hard kind of question. And that challenges our worldviews about who is qualified to be here. And so when I think of the harm that's caused in these spaces, it's tied to qualification. And so how I've really helped myself move past that and help those around me move past that is I've really thought, how do my lived experiences inform my qualification to do this work differently? How have my experiences in overcoming extreme poverty, in living in rural and urban places, in surviving sexual assault, in being a single mother and being disabled, how does that inform how I come and do work in the energy space? And not only is that empowering to me, but now I have the language to explain my value to others. And in doing that, I'm supporting them in understanding how others like me also have value in this space. And so when I think of qualification and relationship to qualification and relationship to time, these are two relationships where we have the opportunity to cause some of the most harm in our work, but where we can also find some of the most liberating and decolonizing opportunities to move forward in ways that honor diverse people, non-human kin, and Earth.
That was amazing. How's that for solutions? And James is our solutions guy and our questions guy. Let's hear your lovely perspective.
I have a mic here, sorry. Okay. Yeah, it's okay. Wow, brilliant words. I don't know how to follow that, considering I, did all this post-secondary and I'm wearing a suit. I think I should just be quiet. No. I think from what we've heard, that sense of authenticity and understanding our identity is a key piece to our conversations and centering that. 7gen 1.0 that happened in 2019 thanks to DISA and team. I was a part of a workshop that Larissa was facilitating for, I believe it was about youth career development. You can do it, any job is yours, all this amazing messaging, and it was great. There was no critiques about it, with the exception that there was only one Larissa, and I believe your little one was around 2, and it was just, there wasn't enough facilitators. So I walked in, and Larissa was like, hey, James, there's this quiet table in the back. Can you please go help them out? Just do the worksheet, it's fine, you'll get it. And I was like, okay, I guess so. And then, so I went over there and I sat down, and indeed, these youth, coming from the res, from northern and remote places, I could feel that they felt a little bit out of place. Being in this fancy conference center, talking all things energy and finance and fundraising and all this, and it's very far removed from the realities on survival for a lot of our youth in our communities. So they're just looking at their sheets like, I don't know what to do. This doesn't seem applicable to me. Things like this, right? So it's just like sitting down with them, trying to engage. Like, hey, what kind of job do you want? Like, what do you want to be, and things like that. And they're like, not really engaging with me at all. It's going nowhere. It's So then I was like, okay, youth, just never mind all that. I'm just going to just tell you my story, even though you didn't ask me. I'm just going to tell you anyways, because we have 20 minutes left, and hopefully this does something, Start telling them about my story, about rediscovering my identity as being a Nihiel person. My mom raised me to have braids. She gave me a Nihiel first name, Mihskakwan. My middle name is James. So, going into elementary school in suburban Edmonton, a lot of kids would tease me about that. Constant misgendering. No one really understood a little native boy, I guess, and what I'm about, and all the identity that comes with that. So I was very ashamed about it. But, as I started telling them the story about how one day I'm going to regrow the braids, which they are coming in good, it's 2 years, and how I wanted to change my first name for a long time when I was little, and now I've rediscovered that it's actually a gift. It's one of the biggest gifts that my mom has given me, because now people are forced to learn at least one Cree word in their lives. If they meet me, they have to learn it, and they have to pronounce it correctly, and it's an amazing gift. And overcoming all the homophobia in high school, for example, and figuring out my identity again, identity crisis 2.0. It's just never ending, I guess. But championing that, and then being a voice for other queer youth in our high school, and changing policies in our school division to be more inclusive. And sure enough, as I'm describing all this story, right, the youth start picking up their pens, and they start writing down things in the worksheet. And, we were doing the assignment, don't worry. And so they start writing down things. And sure enough, I'm done my big story. And I was like, hey, so tell me what you wrote. Tell me, you don't have to, but it would be awesome to share what's happening here. And sure enough, the youth are like, at the end of the day, I'm trying to gather what their motivation is, right? That's where we start with youth, is figuring out what drives them. What's the passion? What's the motivation for them to go beyond just thinking about survival? And for a lot of them, they centered on family. They centered a lot of their motivation on, I just have my mom, who's a single mom, and I want to make her proud, for example. Or I have 7 brothers and sisters in an overcrowded house, and I want to buy a new big house one day for them, or something like that, right? It was so centered on family, on every single youth participant. And what I gathered from that was that the youth have the passion, they have the drive, and it's a very valuable resource in our communities for the kind of work that we're doing. We cannot train passion, and we cannot train motivation, but we can train the soft and the hard skills for them to see through all that passion, and to actually to manifest all of it. And so that was a very moving session from 7 Gen, from Larissa's workshop, because our youth, they're so precious, and they're so, hopeful. And we need to harvest that. We need to harness that energy, and that's what keeps me going for the work that we're doing at 7Gen. So it's important for all y'all in this room to really invest that time and that effort into hearing out the youth and making them believe in themselves.
Wow.
Thank you, James. That was incredible. So one thing I've noticed, we didn't really go through a deep introduction of where everybody's coming from organizationally, but I think this conversation is way too important. And tomorrow we have the space and booth set up. You'll see these guys around this week, the rest of today, right, in the gala. So ask questions and dive deep into what it is that they do, because it's more than we have this time to talk about on stage right now. But it also gives you an opportunity to really get to know these incredible people that are here and what they do, right? And the why, I think, is really, really important for us all to understand. So now the challenging part for all of you, okay? You've got some work to do now. Are you ready? Yeah, so much enthusiasm. So the last question or thing I'll ask of this crew today, and Dakota, I'll start with you. Let's leave everybody with a call to action. What is a way that you identify, we talked about solutions, we talked about some of the barriers that we've faced to all get here. What's a call to action that you have for the audience or just people in general?
Yeah, thanks, Jordyn. I think I'm going to share a few questions that you can feel free just to kind of latch on to, whichever ones resonate, maybe write them down, maybe even take them back to your organization and think about it or something. But ultimately, not to be too pessimistic, because there's so much power in the stories and the inspiration and the vulnerability and everything that youth take and they provide in spaces like this. And as James was saying, to inspire other youth, that's really amazing. But at the end of the day, organizationally, I don't think I can tell you how you should be engaging youth, because again, it's always very context specific. Like, where are they at in their life? What do they want to do? What are the opportunities available in the community? What's coming down in terms of future opportunities, or what is the vision of the community, or whatever your organization is? It's very specific. And a lot of times we see people asking for funding to support youth, which is great, to ask youth how they see these sort of things, which is great. But what I don't think I see happening a lot is people asking themselves how they can engage youth. So we mentioned some of the barriers, right, like financial. I wouldn't have been here without some Indigenous leaders personally signing line of credits for me to attend university. And I wouldn't have been here without people like Pembina constantly providing opportunities to come to spaces like this. So there's financial barriers, and there's all sorts of other barriers. So one reflection question would be for yourself or your organization, what can I do to engage youth? And a part of that is, how can I change the way that I'm operating to engage youth? So once again, we see things with leveraging financing in unique ways, changing timelines, starting new kinds of programs, but oftentimes it's as simple as taking the time, designating a certain person to actually give them the time of day to go out there and talk to youth and ask them directly, instead of hiring a consultant, or instead of blasting out an email at 5 p.m. because you're already so busy you don't have time to work with youth, right? So ask yourself how you can engage youth and how you can change what you're doing to remove those barriers, to utilize that motivation and that creativity and that innovation that is already inherent in so many people. It just requires understanding who they are and what they need. I wrote down a few other questions. I just want to share them because I think some of them are really good. Yes, another really good question, and thanks to Gia for sharing this at our youth session. Ask yourself, who isn't here? So we are all here, and I can tell you right now, we've probably all faced as I'm sure many of you have as well, many, many barriers, lots of development, lots of training programs, lots of academics, lots of being vulnerable and reflection and stuff to get here. So we're extremely privileged to be here, but that was a lot of labor and a long time for us to be here. How many other people haven't received those opportunities? What are the barriers, or what are the challenges, or what are the, sometimes it's just as simple as not even being aware that these opportunities exist. Who isn't here in your community, for your organization? Who are you not engaging that aren't the typical people? Not that, like, we are awesome, I know that. But there's so many more awesome people out there, right? Like, how many other Larissas can there be? How many other Jameses, how many other Jordans, and everybody here to facilitate, sorry.
There's only one Danny.
There is only one Danny. There's only one Antarctic auntie. We know that. Yeah. But there could be, 100 of the rest of us, and yeah. So ask yourself that. I think legitimately, I think it's a very serious question, and I think it perhaps takes some serious reflection. I probably have other questions, but I'll pass on the mic for now, and if anything pops up, I'll give you perhaps one final reflection question afterwards.
So I think all of our worldviews are quite in sync, and we're going to have the same thing. So I'd say my call to action is, I'll start with this. I was down in Antarctica. We got a whole bunch of workshops and things that we learned about that place, and one of them being that there are over 7 billion people in the world, right? And each and every one of us is, metaphorically speaking, is responsible for a football size. So we all have a football field in Antarctica that we are responsible for and that we have to look after. Every single one of us, and that completely blew my mind. Like, there was this huge chunk that just fell off, and it was the size of Italy. So a lot of y'all's football fields are going into the iceberg graveyard right now. And that is so tragic, because that's an actual thing, and it's really happening right now at this very moment. And so my call to action would be to just, get more information about Antarctica and look at the different initiatives that are going down there, and creating solutions and how we can actually help and make an effective change for that place. For not just for, Antarctica, but for everybody in the world, because that's what it comes down to.
Thank you, Danny.
Awesome words. Yes, championing Antarctica. Very important. Yes, yes. I hope that wasn't my football field, by the way. I really hope not. Yeah, I mean, my call to action through my story, I hope you got the subliminal message. No? Okay, so basically it's mentorship. It's mentorship. It's investing your personal time to give to youth that you believe in them. And I'm a mentor with Generation Power, a fabulous program from ICE. I encourage all y'all to please apply if you haven't already. And my mentee, our first meeting over Zoom, it was so funny because apologies if you are one of them, but turn on my camera, right, and his camera's off, and then it's a few seconds of awkwardness, and then suddenly he turns on his camera and he's like, "Oh my goodness, thank goodness you're not an old white guy," and I was like. And I'm saying that with all the love, because I have some good allies who are old white guys as well, some good mentors of myself. But the peer-to-peer mentorship in particular really goes a long way to really demonstrate to other youth in this space that it's definitely possible, and it's definitely real for them when they're talking to somebody who is in this space. And help guide them and empower them into these spaces. So that's my call to action for all y'all.
Ooh, okay, I'll be quick. Ayla Brown actually yesterday said, they struck me so much. They talked about having to teach their partners how to work with you. And that really struck a chord because I find that that's what we're often doing, is we're teaching our non-Indigenous partners and sometimes other Indigenous partners how to work with us as we are creating the work outputs. And I even think of that as a firm that's based in southern Canada and that operates mostly in southern Canada. We have to learn how to work with our northern partners, our northern families. We're constantly learning what does it look like to do this ethically, to do this honorably. And I think like if you leave with any kind of intention, it's to be more open to that reciprocal learning. Oftentimes, if we've been in the industry for 30 plus years, if we have these degrees, if we know the language, it can sometimes lead to a deficit understanding of qualification from anyone who doesn't have that. And so being open to learning from youth, to learning from these remote communities and seeing their contributions as valuable, to seeing their experiences of time as valuable, and to ask, what does it look like to honor your relationship to time, to honor your qualifications? I really hope we leave with that. And again, elle spoke to this yesterday, and I just want to re-emphasize that openness to learn from each other, not only in the work outputs, but in how we work.
Okay. All right, well, there's definitely some homework for all of us, I think. Thank you all so much. I think we all owe you about 10 pounds of tobacco for all that knowledge you just offered. That is absolutely invaluable. And not only, your knowledge, but as Larissa mentioned, your time. And especially as young people coming up in this space, like, if you can try to imagine how many different ways these four people are being pulled, because they're doing some incredible work. And if there's young people in the crowd now that have questions or come into the space, like you can sit with us. And that's what we just want to demonstrate is in our session tomorrow, there's a youth engagement session tomorrow. It's not just for young people. It's for everybody, because we all have to create more space and more opportunity and do better to include young people in the energy sector. So thank all of you guys so much gratitude. Kananaskum tin, hi, and especially to you all. What a great session. Thank you. And really quickly, I have one little action. Can everybody stand up? Can you guys? So can everybody just pretend, imagine you're carrying a ball. Maybe it's like a baseball or a volleyball or a beach ball, but hold it out in front of you. Okay? Hold it out in front of you. So I made a bet that we wouldn't get a standing ovation today. Thank you.
Okay. I'd love everybody just to stay in the room if possible. Mihskakwan and Jordyn, before you go, I just want to express my gratitude for joining our advisory committee and bringing the youth perspective to this conference. I really, really appreciate that very much. Thank you. Thank you. I am blown away by the humility, courage, vulnerability, laughter of all of you. I feel hope when I listen to the youth. So thank you all for coming and sharing your thoughts. I will come tomorrow for your session.